Well, that was awesome. Hey guys, my name's deli-wrap and welcome to my Halo Infinite technical preview review. Now, this review is in-depth. I go through everything. The list of what I'll be going through is on screen for you now. I'll have this video split up into these segments and the time cards will be in the description as well as in the video itself, if I've actually figured out how to split the video up. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into my Halo Infinite tech preview review, starting with the weapons. The new MA40 AR is amazing and really feels like the weapon it should have always been. In previous games, the pistol has very much overpowered the AR in multiplayer as its time to kill was marginally faster. But in Halo Infinite, it seems like the reign of the pistol meta has officially finished. Well, maybe not finished, but the AR is making a comeback, as the new time to kill is much faster than previous Halo games and can easily beat out the pistol in a one-on-one fight. I'll get into the TTKs for each weapon later, at least those we've previously seen in other Halo titles. The AR is definitely a good all-round weapon in Infinite, and I found myself favouring it over a lot of the other guns the majority of the time. The design of this weapon is also a great mix between Halo 5's AR and the design used in Halo Reach. All in all, the new MA40 AR is a great all-round weapon to use. The Pulse Carbine. I like the concept, love the design and the idea behind it, but it's a very intermittent weapon. Now, I feel like this is most likely due to the hitboxes of the characters, which I'll get onto later, but my biggest problem is that, unlike the Carbine, this weapon is only really useful at range. The first note about this is that because the projectiles track enemies, more often than not when firing from the hip in close range, the projectiles don't track your enemy at all, and so at least 80% of your shots are going to miss. Now, as I said, this could just be due to the hitboxes not being the best right now, but the weapon is also very different to what I expected. Instead of being a seeking projectile weapon, I was expecting a burst carbine. Straight and fast plasma bullets firing like a BR. Now, I know that the Covenant weapons are meant to be very different to UNSC weapons, but I feel like the projectile tracking in this game isn't strong at all. I'll get onto the plasma pistol in a bit, but it has the same problem when it comes to seeking projectiles. I think that 343 for the Pulse Carbine either need to tighten the seeking projectiles and make them slightly more accurate / faster at getting to their target, or they should switch the firing mode of the Pulse Carbine to be exactly what it says, a Pulse Carbine. 3 or 4 shots in quick succession with no tracking projectiles. Literally a Covenant Carbine, but made into a burst rifle. Then keep the rest the same. But as I said, either this or they just need to tighten up the tracking of projectiles, especially in a close combat situation. Or maybe it is just the hitboxes. But apart from this, I like the concept behind the Pulse Carbine and can't wait to see what it's like in the final version of the game. The BR-75 is back in all its Halo 3 glory. The time to kill is particularly identical and the design is extremely similar. This weapon felt gorgeous to use in the technical preview, especially when using it in a 1v1 situation to finish off shieldless enemies or to use at range to pick off the enemy team. The design has gone back to the old Halo 3 look and I'm honestly so happy with this. The design looks and feels incredible, and it's just an amazing weapon to use. The sound design for the weapon and all the others is incredible and I can't wait to pop some grunts with it in the campaign. The VK78 Commando. I mean, what a gun. I had so much fun using this and it's definitely one of my favourite of the new weapon arsenal so far. My only issue is the flinch mechanic. While it makes sense for this to be a thing on snipers or even the skewer, I feel that for the Commando and the BR, the flinch mechanic that stops you from ADSing shouldn't be applied to these guns. While I understand why some weapons have this, I feel that these two weapons don't need it. Just like past Halo games where weapons like the BR and the DMR haven't had this mechanic, but you still flinch while ADSing. Just not in a way that cancels your aim. Apart from this, I really enjoyed using the Commando and think that it's definitely a solid addition to the UNSC weapon roster. The new MK50 sidekick is a nice addition to the game and is a good middle between the Halo 5 pistol and the Magnum we all know and love from the older games. The sidekick's TTK is a nice in-between and doesn't feel too powerful, but unlike Halo 5's pistol overpowering most primary weapons, Halo Infinite's MK50 sidekick feels like it should do. It feels like a secondary weapon, but it can still be used effectively as a main weapon if you choose to. The sidekick is a great addition to Halo with a similar design to the Halo 3 ODST's pistol, which I was always a fan of, and I'm very excited to use this gun in the final game. The plasma pistol in Halo Infinite, while being amongst one of the fastest TTKs of any Halo game, lacks in a strong tracking projectile when charged up. Much like the projectiles for the pulse carbine, the plasma pistol's charged attack feels weaker than its previous iterations, being so slow that it can be easily dodged, even just by walking to the side as it approaches you. While this stops people from using the noob combo, it does mean that the weapon is almost rendered useless against players, but could still be useful against vehicles as it's used as a vehicle EMP rather than an enemy shield EMP. I like the change, but also feel like they should slightly increase the speed of the projectile so that it's not useless against enemy players. But even if they don't do this for the final release, the weapon will still be useful to use in big team battles against enemy vehicles. The CQS-48 Bulldog, or the Bulldog. This shotgun has a gorgeous design and is beautiful to use. It doesn't take a single shot to take out an enemy like the combat shotguns from previous Halo titles, but its fire rate more than compensates for this. I do hope that they bring the combat shotgun back too, but I'm overall super happy with this gun. I think it's a brilliant addition to the game and definitely takes the spot for my #1 weapon to use in this technical preview, and I cannot wait to take out some brutes and elites and grunts with it in the campaign. The Heatwave, the Covenant's attempt at a shotgun. This gun is interesting, allowing the player to bounce projectiles off walls and round corners. Having two different modes, a horizontal mode and a vertical mode, this gun definitely stands out from the rest. It can be difficult to use, but when you hit your shots correctly, the reward is great. I enjoyed using this weapon a lot and I'm extremely excited to see how it handles in the campaign. The Needler. Once again, the Needler is a formidable weapon and one that has always been. While the fire rate of the Needler doesn't have the same charge up mechanic as previous games, it is still a fast killing weapon that surely gives the user the upper hand in most fights. I love the new sound design for the Needler along with its new physical design. The only drawback of the weapon is its slow reload speed on an empty mag, compared to older Halo games. But if you manage to keep a single bullet in the mag, or needle in this case, then the reload is much faster and is much more formidable if used well. The S7 Sniper has always been one of my all-time favourite weapons to use in Halo, and this version doesn't disappoint. The only disappointment was the fact that it was so difficult to use without something like a drop wall or invisibility because of the flinch mechanic and the fact that bots can instantly shoot you as you come around the corner, or even as they did. Other than this minor inconvenience, the weapon felt great to use whilst being a bit more of a challenge than previous Halo titles, along with having the slowest TTKs for body shots than we've seen in Halo history. The Skewer. This gun was a blast to use, literally. But the hitbox made it very difficult. Now, I know that this weapon is pretty much meant to be a vehicle destroyer, but it's very difficult to use against other players. I found the main reason for this to be the hitboxes. Now, I've mentioned them a lot throughout these weapon reviews, but the Skewer is where they see the problems massively. There were many occasions where I'd hit an enemy in the foot or back of the leg, or in the head, and the Skewer has failed to eliminate them. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's just because you're shit. And I tell you now it's not. Because as you can see from the footage in the background, the Skewer shot is literally stuck in the enemy, but has done no damage. But anyway, apart from this unfortunate situation with the player hitboxes, this weapon is fun to use and once again rewards you massively for you managing to hit your shots. It's also a great way to piss off your friends. Stand like on this thing,
Ah!
Okay, bye.
Next time I get the fucking grapple axe.
The Ravager. This weapon was unfortunately subject to a bug within the preview that stopped its charged shot from doing any damage to players. But even without this, the weapon managed to be one of my favourites to use. The power of the weapon allowed it to be a 2-burst kill, provided you were able to hit all projectiles on your enemies. It was also a good cleanup weapon for enemies clumped together that had no shields, as it had splash damage along with being strong against shieldless enemies. Now, I'm really excited to see what the charge shot is like in the final game, since we obviously weren't really able to use it properly in the technical preview. The M41 Spanker. This weapon is a boss, and is a definite must-have when in a multiplayer match, although to me, it kind of felt as if it was weaker than it should be. Whilst this could be due to hitboxes, once again I'll get into them later, I felt that this weapon lacked the right punch that a rocket launcher should have, especially the Spanker. I'm not saying that I want it to instantly demolish every enemy within a 100-foot radius, but I do feel that this weapon could have a slightly bigger blast radius that truly makes it feel like the rocket launcher it is. Apart from this, I'm so glad that 343 decided to stick with the Spanker instead of the rocket launcher that was introduced in Halo 5, and I honestly can't wait to use it in campaign against a whole bunch of grunts and elites, and especially brutes. The Gravity Hammer. Whilst the Gravity Hammer looks and feels like it should, with the slower animation and bigger sound, making it really feel like it's something that's used by a brute and not a Spartan, it lacks in power compared to its previous iterations of the weapon, especially compared to the Gravity Hammer in Halo 5, which can kill enemies directly behind you when aiming at the floor because of its area of effect, or would knock enemies away from you and possibly even remove their shields when in close proximity to them. This wasn't the case in Halo Infinite. To me, the Gravity Hammer didn't exactly feel like a power weapon. There were often times where I would swing at an enemy and I would be thrown towards them, as usual, but then the area of effect was non-existent and the enemy would be able to turn around and instantly melee me in the back. Now, a factor to this could have been the fact that they were bots and so could make these moves and judgments faster than a player, but there was no area of effect around the player. It wouldn't push the enemy away from you at all, making it even easier for them to turn and instantly hit you in the back. Apart from this, I loved the new updated Gravity Hammer, the new slower animation that really showed how this weapon is made for a giant brute and not a Spartan. I would just like to see a tweak to add an area of effect that pushes enemies away from them when used like in the older titles, even if it doesn't actually damage the enemy, just something that gives the Gravity Hammer area of effect and pushes the enemy away. Grenades in Halo have always been a useful ordnance to have and to use when damaging enemies before entering a room, or even trying to take out groups of enemies camping in one spot. In Halo Infinite, however, the grenades have received a massive nerf. While it's still a single grenade kill when sticking an enemy with a spike or plasma grenade, they lack in power when thrown next to enemies. The plasma grenade in most previous Halo games have been a 1 grenade kill when next to an enemy, and the frag has always been a 2 grenade kill. While I like that the plasma grenade no longer kills a player with a single nade unless stock, I do feel like the power is too low for a grenade, especially for the frags. Frag grenades in Halo Infinite feel powerless and are only really useful as a finishing utility when an enemy has no shield. There would be times where I would throw 2 frags and 2 plasma grenades at a group of enemies, and they would come out on the other side hardly damaged at all. So I do feel like the grenades need a slight buff. Even if they're not a guaranteed 2 grenade kill, at least make them strong enough that 4 grenades could actually take out an enemy. The spike grenade, on the other hand, was incredible to see back in Halo. This grenade has had a major change that definitely makes it a better grenade than before. Before, the grenade would explode and shoot a small amount of needles in a straight projection away from it, and they would only travel a couple of feet. In Halo Infinite, however, this is no longer the case. The grenade now shoots spikes that bounce off the walls and around the area in a multitude of directions, and make this grenade more versatile and useful than its predecessors. All in all, the frag and plasma grenades need slight tweaking in my opinion, but the spike grenade seems like a much better version than we've seen in the past.
The TTK for weapons has changed several times across the years, and so right now I'm going to show you a list of all the TTKs for the different Halo games, with Halo Infinite at the top. This is just to give you a sense of the changes made for this game and how they compare to previous titles. I would just like to point out that these are the results that I got from my own testing, and there are multiple variables to consider, so these are just the fastest times that I got with my testing myself. And I did record the actual footage itself and obviously time it and everything, but because of this video being long enough as it is, I'm not going to actually play them for you now. So here's the final results in a little kind of table for you.
Live Fire was a great introduction map, not just because of it being a literal training camp, but also because it gave you a variety of areas to work with, both indoors and outdoors, along with towers and small areas of cover. It was a great map to test out weapons and movement on, apart from snipers. It was a bit too close range for snipers, I felt. It was also a great introduction into the new multiplayer experience overall. Another thing that I liked about Live Fire is that it was an area that was built in homage to Sergeant Johnson, who we all know and love from the previous Halo games. Recharge was a very interesting map, and was used to introduce players to the grapple shot and also the new gravity hammer. Being a completely enclosed map allowed for players to play around with the grapple shot, test out its capabilities, along with giving players a close quarters experience in which to test out the newly changed gravity hammer. I enjoyed the map because of its multiple levels and small hidden sections and walkways that allowed for an interesting multiplayer experience and opened up opportunities for different types and styles of gameplay. Bazaar was the final map we got in the preview, and it was definitely my favourite. I very much like a symmetrical map, which the other two hadn't been. What I like about symmetrical maps is the fact that players all have the same experience. They all start in the same spawn location just on opposite sides of the map, with the same weapon layout, allowing the experience to be equal and giving all the players the same advantages. Whilst I do like an unsymmetrical map because of the way that it makes each match more interesting rather than following the same pattern every time, I like the way that everyone starts as an equal, with an equal chance of getting power items and weapons. This map was also just beautiful to look at and was incredibly designed and well thought out, with hidden passages that I didn't even notice until, a few games into trying the map. Overall, I loved each map individually. I loved the variation in locations and experiences, and this gave me a hella ton of hope for the rest of the maps and multiplayer experience of Halo Infinite, so I'm very excited to see the different maps that we get in the final game. I love the new customization. I love the variation and new possibilities available to players and can't wait to experience the full thing. We only got a small amount to play around with in terms of customization, but it was a nice little taster into what it will be like in the final product. My hope is that we get to create our own custom colour palettes, as we were only able to equip the pre-made palettes, which were cool, but it would be cool if we could make a custom palette, allowing players to create their own colour look for their Spartan rather than having to stick to these specific pre-made palettes. Other than that, I love the variation available within the character customization. It's 100 times better than the customization in Halo 5, and a definite step up from the customization we had in Halo Reach. Now, the personalization tab was unavailable in the tech preview, which stopped players from creating their own clan tags and banners. But for those who signed into the Halo Waypoint VNext app, this part of the customization was available on there. I'm excited to see what it's like in-game, since you're able to not only change your clan tag and banner, but you can also change your Spartan's voice. But that was very tedious to do over the app, since you weren't able to hear the voices until you were in a match, at which point you'd forgotten what your previous Spartan voice sounded like. I also absolutely loved the new custom AI feature, and I'm excited to see if they add more when the game releases. I love the AI Cirque and Butler because their voice lines were amazing to have accompanying you in your multiplayer experience. The other AIs were awesome as well, but these were the two that I used the most and really experienced the most. I love how they all have their own personality and really allow the player to enhance their experience with an AI that fits them and their personalities individually. The menu was very easy to navigate and very straightforward, and allowed the player to easily customize their Spartan, check their Battle Pass challenges, and look for games. But the best part of this menu was definitely the music. We finally get to hear a lot more of the game's soundtrack, and all I can say is, hell yes, in all caps, because the soundtrack is incredible and gives you a sense of nostalgia with the similarities to the old Halo themes, whilst adding a new and modern touch to the scores. I can't wait to get the official soundtrack and hear all the music in all its full glory and blast it out at full volume. The UI and controls for the game were straightforward and easy to use. The new friend-foe system was also really great to experience and great to get a test of, but I'll get into that in a minute. First, let's talk about the rest. The controls were pretty straightforward, combining elements of Halo 5's controls along with older Halo titles controls. I did change a couple of my buttons around that allowed for a better experience for myself, but the fact that 343 have allowed players to create their own custom template is amazing and allows players to fit their controls to their playstyle in a more open and free way. One of the new additions to the games and its controls was the weapon drop. This allowed players to drop one of their weapons on the floor for their teammates or just to get rid of it. I like this addition as it's always been a problem when your friend picks up a weapon for you to stop enemies from getting it, but then you have to go and find another weapon on the map to switch out with so they could give it to you. This makes it much easier and would definitely allow for interesting plays within the game. The UI was clear and concise. Instead of having the weapons and ordnance showing in the top corner of your screen, we had it in the bottom right corner. Like most modern shooters, I liked this. The only thing I didn't like too much was the placement of the minimap. Whilst I like the new minimap in the way that it spins dependent on your character's direction, I prefer to have the minimap in the top left corner as it makes it a lot easier and better to quickly look at whilst moving around the map. Having it in the bottom corner stops the player from easily seeing enemies in their peripheral vision whilst quickly taking a glance at the map, as they're now mostly looking at the floor on their screen. Whereas if you're looking at the top of your screen, you're more likely to be able to see enemies faster as they appear on your screen in front of you. It's also less of a strain moving your eyes to the top left corner of your screen than to the bottom left corner of your screen without moving your head as well. I also feel like it's better in the top left of the screen because that's where minimaps are located in the majority of SPF titles nowadays. But hey, that's just my opinion, and if you agree, then cool. If not, then that's chill. It's just my opinion. A new UI change that I was very, very excited to see was a new FOV slider. Halo has never allowed players to alter their FOV at all, and so being able to switch my FOV up to 120 from 78 was a massive win in my books. I love having a wider FOV because of the way that it seems more like a natural eye line, along with giving the player a much higher peripheral vision to use within the game. So all in all, an incredible addition / decision on 343's part. Now the new friend-foe system. I absolutely love this. The fact that you're able to keep your color customization in-game rather than being switched to either red or blue is such a win. It allows you to see other people's customization without having to be in infection or free-for-all. This system also allowed you to give your friends and foes different colored outlines, and I love this. I love the fact that you could choose the colors you wanted for your friends, foes, and party members. Although the party members color didn't really seem to work within the technical preview, at least not that I could see when I was playing with friends. I love this new feature and I'm so excited to see my mint green teammates and crimson foes again. It was awesome to get our hands on the new Halo Battle Pass. My only issue was the fact we didn't really get to complete it. While we did get XP boosts and daily challenges, we didn't get enough to complete the Battle Pass, unless you didn't buy all the cosmetics available in the store and use the rest of the currency to purchase Battle Pass levels. What I felt could have made the experience slightly better was giving us more challenges each day rather than the same complete X amount of matches to get 100 XP towards your next level. So hopefully they will add more challenges for when the game finally launches later this year. And I don't just mean more challenges because they will add them, I mean more daily challenges than just the complete X amount of matches. Other than that, I like the new Battle Pass system, and the fact that once you buy it, you never lose it, means that you don't have to play every single day throughout that season like in Apex or COD. I also like the idea that if you miss a Battle Pass, you can go back and buy it if you really want to. Another cool feature is that people can't just buy items from the Battle Pass individually from the store. You have to earn them like everyone else through the Battle Pass. I like the way that 343 has tackled the ever-growing Battle Pass scene, and I'm excited to see the first Battle Pass that we get when the game comes out, which is going to be about Reach. Halo Infinite's gameplay is awesome and very much gives the player that boots on the ground Halo experience that we didn't really get in Halo 5. The combat in Halo 5 was great, and I love the multiplayer experience because of its fast pace and fast TTK with weapons. But Halo Infinite just takes the fast paced experience down a notch and makes the multiplayer experience feel more grounded. The way that the game plays and handles is awesome and is definitely the best multiplayer experience we've had yet. My only problem is that playing against bots doesn't give you a proper multiplayer experience, and the reason why is because the bots instantly lock onto you as soon as they turn a corner, or as soon as you appear from invisibility, and I mean within the first millisecond, because bots have no margin for error like live players, and so sniping was almost impossible due to the fact that every time you managed to see them whilst ADSing, they would instantly hit you, cancelling your scope because of the flinch mechanic. But apart from the bots not truly giving you a proper multiplayer experience, this multiplayer and combat was incredible and really made you work for your kills, without making it too difficult. The movement in the game was interesting and definitely gave you the real Halo experience. Compared to Halo 5's fast-paced movement and Halo 3's slower movement, Halo Infinite felt like the perfect in-between of these two. The main difference is shown with the game's sprint mechanic. Halo 4 and 5's sprint was fast, allowing you to get from A to B in almost half the time. But it would take a second to start firing at the enemy if they were in front of you. Halo Infinite's sprint isn't quite as fast, and not that much faster than walking itself, but it does allow you to fire almost instantly when going from sprinting to shooting. Halo Infinite's sprint isn't meant to be a speed boost as such, but it's meant to be more of a utility. It's more of a way to allow the player to utilize the slide mechanic rather than give them a big speed boost. It was also shown before with videos that talked about how in Halo 5, map remakes had to be scaled up from their counterparts in older games to allow for sprinting around the map. By removing the big speed boost, they're taking away the impact on the maps and gameplay, allowing for a smoother multiplayer experience. If you want to feel a bit faster though, then upping your FOV from the standard 78 to 120, it gives you that feeling of moving slightly faster, but will also give you a better peripheral view. I like this change to the sprint as it keeps the boots on the ground experience for Halo and gives you a smoother multiplayer experience. Another new and awesome addition to the game was the new intro when entering a multiplayer game. While it's nothing massive or major, it's a cool vanity addition to the game that looks cool and created a few funny moments when seeing teammates that had joined and left the game, leaving their bodies on the floor in front of your teammates. It's really just a cool and smooth way to enter a match. So as always in a technical preview or beta, there's some glitches or issues with certain aspects of the gameplay. So to help out the devs as best I can, I've made a list here which has all of the glitches and issues that I found during my time playing the technical preview. The first issue for me was the hitboxes. To me, they seemed a lot smaller than they should have been, making multiple shots, especially with the skewer, completely useless and creating issues when going head to head with an enemy. Now, this is something I'm pretty sure 343 knows about, but I'm gonna throw it in here anyways. The Ravager's charged shot. This did 0 damage to enemies when used, but as I said, I'm pretty sure they know about this one. But it would also do 0 damage to the player who fired it when standing in it. I did test this. Now this is a minor issue, but still a glitch nonetheless. A fair amount of the time when a weapon has finished respawning in its rack, the rack doors wouldn't open and remain shut, even though the weapon had respawned and was available. There were two fixes that I found for this. The first one was just to hold X next to the rack and you would still be able to pick up the weapon, even if the doors were closed and no prompt was on the screen. The second way to fix this was simply to punch the doors when the weapon had respawned and the doors would snap open. Now the next one is definitely something that needs a fix, as it makes the game crash. I found that when two players pick up the same weapon at the same time, the game would freeze and everyone would get thrown back to the lobby. I found this with picking up the Heatwave, the Bulldog and the Spanker, but I'm pretty sure it's just with any weapon. Now I was going to throw this under UI and controls, but I thought that it would fit better here in the glitches and issues part of the video, as I don't know whether this was deliberate or not. Obviously Halo Infinite is being released on both Xbox and PC, and so it makes sense that 343 would include the mouse and keyboard settings and console as well. But as much as the keyboard would work when in-game, the mouse wouldn't. I tried multiple different connections and found no fix for this bug. If mouse and keyboard weren't meant to work for console yet, then there's no issue. But obviously, if it was meant to work, then this is an issue, and I just wanted to mention it. Now, the final issues were just some smaller issues like flashing menus, entering a game when it's already full, entering a game and then being kicked immediately, being put into a game with your party member and then them staying in the game but you get booted out, simple things like that. Just some smaller issues that I'm sure were just because it's a technical preview. Overall, I absolutely loved this playtest, and I'm so happy that I got the chance to take part in it. I love the way that the game handled and played, and can't wait for the next playtest, and then for the final game. If you want to get the game yourself, then you can. When Halo Infinite launches, its multiplayer will be free across both Xbox and PC for all players, both through the Xbox Store and also Steam. While I'm not endorsed or sponsored by Xbox, Microsoft, 343 or Halo, I would highly recommend this multiplayer experience. It's extremely fun and, in my opinion, the best Halo multiplayer experience to date. Plus, it's free. So when the game is released later this year, be sure to check it out, and I hope to see you Spartans on the battlefield. If you enjoyed this video, please do make sure to leave a like and share with your friends. Also subscribe if you're new to my channel and want to see weekly gaming content on Halo, Apex Legends and a multitude of other games. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, stay classy guys. Peace.
Thank you.